Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Grace Rauh, the Executive Director of Citizens Union, New York's oldest good government and democracy organization, which is now home to the Five Borough Institute, our public policy think tank tackling the biggest challenges facing New York City. And given Five Borough's mission, it will surprise no one here that we have spent the last 2 years intensely focused on childcare, which of course is one of the biggest obstacles facing New Yorkers. And that is what has brought all of us here together today. We collectively, by showing up to this conversation, we are not just here to talk about the problem, but we are here to be part of the solution. I want to extend a huge thank you to our host, Etsy, for welcoming us into their incredibly beautiful headquarters in Brooklyn. Thank you to Robinhood for supporting today's work, the New York Community Trust, the EGL Charitable Foundation, and to our many partners and supporters who are in the room. When I had my first child 14 years ago this month, I had no idea what we were about to encounter. The joy of parenthood, thankfully, yes. But it also came with a staggering bill. My husband was a law firm associate. I was a journalist at New York One. We felt incredibly comfortable financially in this city, but that was until we needed childcare. We love New York. We wanted to stay. We stretched every dollar to make it work. New York is filled with stories like these, but in far too many cases, they have a very different ending. And the long-term implications are real. Families with young children are more than twice as likely to leave the city. That's shrinking our tax base, making it harder for businesses to hire and keep their existing workforce. And so many of you in the room today are employers. You know this firsthand. I have heard it from senior leaders at some of our biggest companies in New York and from small business owners. Childcare barriers drive turnover and make it harder to recruit new employees. Every year, thousands of parents, mostly mothers, are leaving the workforce or downshifting their careers to meet their childcare needs. And the cost to our city is enormous, with billions in lost economic activity every year. According to a recent analysis from the city controller, who is one of our speakers today, a New York family needs to earn $334,000 to be able to afford childcare for a single toddler. That is staggering. It is unacceptable. And that's if they can find a spot. We have roughly twice as many children under the age of 5 as we have licensed child care seats. The system is not working. Families can't pay more. Providers can't charge less. This is the definition of a broken market. Last year, Five Borough released a major report on New York City's childcare system. We spotlighted the work of longtime childcare advocates, many of whom are in this room. We offered policy fixes to stabilize and expand care. But we knew now what we know today. This market is broken and it requires deeper public investments to fix it. Since releasing our report, we have focused on building awareness among business leaders about the scale of the challenge, the economic stakes, and the policy solutions that help us build a stronger, more reliable system. We focused on business leaders because your voices move policy in New York. And this issue affects your companies, your employees, our economy, which is why it is so important to have you be part of this conversation. And we can look to other states to see what is possible when business leads. In Charlotte, North Carolina, a council of CEOs came together and ultimately pushed the county to invest in universal pre-K as a solution to the economic mobility crisis they were facing. In Vermont, a group of CEOs advocated for a payroll tax to increase access to childcare subsidies. The governor of Vermont vetoed the bill out of concern initially for its economic impact, but the CEOs went back to the governor, doubled down on their support for the program, and the legislation ultimately passed. And in New York, we've seen big ideas succeed when the business community steps up as champions. Congestion pricing only advanced when business leaders emerged and made the case that it was needed for New York's long-term economic competitiveness. We are in an incredibly promising and exciting moment. We never could have imagined when we started planning this 9 months ago, but here we are. Childcare is front and center in the mayor's race. It is emerging as a potential area for city and state collaboration, which I am sure we will hear more about when Governor Hochul delivers her keynote address shortly. Business leaders can and must help shape what increased public investment looks like and help make the economic case for moving further, faster. We are here because it is time for New York's business community to rally around childcare, drive towards solutions, and we are so moved by the outpouring of enthusiasm and interest for this gathering today. So we hope that today you learn a little bit something new about childcare in New York, that you begin to see the possibilities for how business can become a force for change on this issue, and that you build meaningful connections with other people in the room. Coming out of our summit, Five Borough intends to create a more formal structure for business leaders in the city to come together to push for policy change and greater public investment in childcare. And we hope that you will join us in that effort. We have a fantastic program planned for the afternoon. There will be drinks at the end, so you don't want to leave, stick around. And now I have the pleasure of handing things over to Josh Silverman, the CEO of Etsy. Etsy has been a powerful leader on childcare, an incredibly gracious partner and host, and we are just so thankful for Josh's leadership. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Grace, so much, and for everything that you and Five Borough are doing. What an amazing organization Five Borough is. We are so lucky to have you, and thank you all for coming and convening. There is a group that includes business leaders, policymakers, advocates, and even a representative baby in the audience speaking for the baby group themselves, which is so appropriate here. And I think that does make a ton of sense because it does, in fact, take a village. We will not solve the issues we need to solve with only the public sector or only the private sector. We really need to come together. At Etsy, we start everything thinking about our sellers. And from the point of view of our sellers, we have about 5 million sellers. Many of those live here in New York State and in New York City. 80% of them are women. 89% of them are businesses of one, and 97% of them are working from home. And we ask them regularly, what is it that is a barrier to you building your business? And consistently, what they tell us is that their caregiving responsibilities are one of the very top barriers that they face. So when we think back to the manufacturing age, the lack of access to roads or ports might have been one of the top things that stopped the manufacturing age from going. In the early days of the technology revolution, lack of access to broadband internet may have been, and in fact, there are still parts of this country that don't have access to broadband internet. But more and more, when we think about what is a brake on economic activity, lack of access to caregiving is a major brake on economic activity in this country. When we want to unleash the power of entrepreneurship and unleash the power of our workforce, we need to give them access to childcare. Coming closer to home, speaking more parochially about Etsy as an employer, Etsy is born and raised in Brooklyn. We are deeply proud of the fact that we're born and raised in Brooklyn, and we need the ability to attract and retain the best talent in the world to support those 5 million sellers and lift them up and do it right here in New York. Some of the best minds in the world come to New York City for the vibrancy and the energy that New York City offers. And what we find is they come to New York when they're young, they meet their partner, and then when they're ready to form a family, we have a hard time keeping them. In fact, New Yorkers are twice as likely to leave the city when they start families as most people, and the reason is because they can't afford childcare. They can't afford it, or they can't get access to a space, as we all know. So this is not just about doing the right thing. It's actually a matter of economic urgency for the city. I speak as one business leader among many, saying in order for this city to grow and achieve its full potential, we need talent to be willing to stay here as they build families. So we at Etsy have known for a long time that serving parents is really important. We're proud of the fact that in 2016, we launched a policy where anyone who is a new parent of any gender gets 26 weeks of paid leave. I'll take a minute to say that we're proud of that. And we think it's been a wonderful tool to attract and retain talent. I think it's really important that it doesn't matter the gender, because if we want the women to succeed, we need to expect their male partners to do their part of the job at home as well. So both are equally stepping out of the workforce to help with their caregiving and then coming back in. And at Etsy, we see that the rates of promotion for women and men all the way up the chain are actually equal, even in their 30s. And I think that is because we have an equal expectation of men and women to do their part helping to raise their children. But we also need childcare as a critical part of that component. So in 2017, I told my team, hey, I want to build a childcare facility here, right here in Etsy. When my daughter was born, I happened to work 2 blocks from my office, and I could come home during the middle of the day to see my baby and go back to work. It was magical. It was incredible. I want that here for our employees. And I was immediately met with all of the reasons we can't do it, starting with the fact that it has to be on the ground floor due to New York City regulations, and there is simply no space we have on our ground floor that would allow for it. But it was an impossibility for me to put childcare. So if you're an employer wanting to do the right thing, the amount of red tape we have means you simply can't open childcare. Now, we were able to form a partnership with Vivi, and Vivi is here today and will be speaking, but they've been able to help us get access to childcare right across the street, which is wonderful. So again, public-private solutions coming to the rescue, but we need better solutions than that. So in terms of solutions, we have an advocacy team at Etsy that works on how do we bring forward not just problems, but answers. And so that the public and the private sector can come together on. We are today announcing a new white paper called Think Micro First, Reimagining Childcare Policy for Self-Employed Artisans and Creative Entrepreneurs. These are solutions that work at the federal, the state, and the local level. They address both the demand and the supply side of the challenges, and they involve both the public and the private sector. We worked with many of you in this room actually to develop that white paper. So we're excited to come forward and talk about practical solutions to this problem that can really work. To close, I want to thank Five Borough for all the great work that you are doing to bring everyone here together. And I'm especially excited to welcome the governor who's waiting in the wings. And I just want to take a minute to say that I've spoken with the governor about this issue multiple times, and I know that it is an issue of sincere, authentic passion for her. We are very lucky to have Governor Hochul as the governor of our great state. I know she really is committed to helping working families with practical solutions to the affordability crisis that we face. She understands that those solutions need to be public-private partnerships, that we need to work together with the private sector in order to do this and do it in a really practical way. I've spoken with her about this very issue on several occasions, and I know that it's a issue that she genuinely cares about, and so we're really lucky to have her. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Tom, who will introduce the governor.